Hello class. Today we're starting a science unit on deserts. We have a special book called Cactus Hotel that's going to teach us a lot about deserts, what the animals are like, what the plants are like, and what the climate is like. Climate is a word that means weather. So I'd like you to listen for different animals we can find in the desert and how they survive there, different types of plants, and how the plants grow in special ways so that they can survive in a dry, hot climate. And also, I'd like you to listen for why is this cactus a hotel? The book is called Cactus Hotel. It's written by Brenda Guberson and illustrated. Remember, illustrating is the art. So the artist is Megan Lloyd. On the front of the book, you may see different desert plants and animals. Let's find out a bit more about those plants and animals as we open the book together. Well, right away you can see that one of the main plants in the desert is a cactus. On a hot, dry day in the desert, a bright red fruit falls from a tall Seguro cactus. Plop! It splits apart on the sandy floor, and 2,000 seeds fall out of it and glisten in the sunlight. When the air cools in the evening, an old pack rat comes out and eats the juicy fruit. Then he skitters across the sand. A seed left clinging to his whiskers falls off under a palo verde tree. There's the rat eating his tasty treat from the bright red fruit. There's one tiny little seed that sticks to his whiskers. And when he runs across the hot sand, it falls under this tree, and it's called the palo verde tree. It's a tree that you can find in the desert. What do you think is going to happen to that seed? It's a good place for a seed to drop. A spotted ground squirrel looking for something to eat does not see it. It's so tiny. A house finch chirping high in the palo verde does not see it. Do you see the ground squirrel and the finch at the top of the tree? We can't see that tiny little seed, can we? But it's on top of the ground. Well, in this page, it's a nice bright day. But when we turn the page, what's happened to the sky? It's gotten quite dark, hasn't it? And do you see what's coming down from the sky? That's right, it's rain. Now in the desert, they don't get rain very often. So when they do get rain, it's a very special day. After many dry days, a heavy rain falls on the desert. Soon, a young cactus sprouts up from the ground. How did it sprout? You guessed it, that little tiny seed was on the ground under the palo verde tree, and when the rain came down, the seed started to soak into the ground. And that's going to be the start of a young cactus. We don't know how long that seed waited there. Slowly, the seedling grows. A palo verde protects it from the hot summer sun and the cold winter nights. So in the desert, it's very hot during the day because there's no clouds to block the sunshine, to shield it. And at night, there's no clouds to keep the heat in the air, in the sky. So that's why in the day it's very hot, and at night it gets very cold. But in the hot days and the cold nights, the palo verde tree protects that baby little cactus. And the baby cactus is called a seedling. After 10 years, not 10 days, 10 years, the baby cactus, or the seedling, is only 4 inches high. It is just big enough for desert ants to climb its spiny sides. So there's the trunk of the Palo Verde tree, and there's the baby seedling cactus. It's not very high, and it took 10 years to grow that high. 4 inches. After a rainstorm, when the desert blooms with color, the cactus pulls in water with its long roots, and it looks fat. So in the desert plants have special roots, and this is one way they adapt to the dry climate of the desert. Some of them have roots that spread way out wide so that when it rains, they can collect as much water as possible. Some of them have roots that go very, very deep into the ground so they can collect the water that's way down under the ground. So when a plant or an animal changes so it can survive in a certain environment, that's called adaptation. Well, another way the cactus adapts to the dry climate, one is by its roots that spread out. Another way is it has pleats in it. If you've ever seen a cactus, you can see it has pleats all the way around. The reason it has pleats is that when it does rain, the cactus stores as much water as possible inside, and those pleats open up and it gets nice and fat. Now it stores that water inside for a long time, but after it has run out, those pleats shrink back in and the cactus gets skinny again. So you can see after the big rainstorm that this cactus has gotten fatter because it's soaked up all kinds of water that it's going to last in there until it gets another rain, which won't come very quickly. A young pack rat stops to drink the water that drips off the tree. Then she scurries off looking for a dry place to make a nest. So that's one way that the rat is adapting. She's drinking as much water as she can from the water that drips off of the leaves of the Palo Verde tree. Do you think that Palo Verde tree will stay looking like this all the time? Right now, it's got all kinds of bright green leaves and flowers. It looks very healthy and alive because it just got a drink from the rain. When there is no rain, the cactus uses up the water that it has stored inside and it looks thin. The Palo Verde loses its tiny leaves, but there's always some shade for the cactus below it. So we said it took 10 years to grow 4 inches. Now 25 years have gone by and the cactus is 2 feet tall. Now, you're probably taller than 2 feet, but it took 25 years for the cactus to grow to be 2 feet tall. A jackrabbit cools off beside it and gnaws on the green pulp. Would you like to chew on a spiky, spiny cactus? I don't think I would. But when a coyote moves in the distance, the jackrabbit disappears into a nearby hole. So there's the cactus after 25 years. It's 2 feet tall. There's the jackrabbit that's trying to chew on it and maybe get some juice out of it. And you can see the coyote in the distance there because he wants to munch on the rabbit. But the rabbit has adapted, one, to protect itself from the heat by digging a burrow underneath the ground, and 2, to keep safe from its predator, the coyote. You can also see that jackrabbit has great big ears. The reason its ears are so big is because that radiates the heat outwards. It's like a shield. Those 2 big ears are kind of like shields that radiate the heat out away from the rabbit. After 50 years, the cactus stands 10 feet tall. So after 25 years, it was 2 feet tall. And now 50 years, it's 10 feet tall, and it looks straight and strong beside the old Palo Verde tree. For the very first time, after 50 years, brilliant white and yellow flowers appear at the top of the cactus. So it takes 50 years for a cactus to be growing for flowers to appear. Every spring now, from now on, after 50 years, those flowers will come once a year. and they will open up for only one night. So there's the cactus after 50 years. It's looking pretty tall now. It's even taller than the Palo Verde tree. And it has flowers on the top. Can you see those flowers? They open up and then they close in the heat of the day. They beckon like a welcoming signal from across the desert. At different times of day and night, birds, bees, and bats come for the nectar. They come a long way for the flower who's only open for a short time to get its nectar. The flower dries up, and just like often happens, out of the flower grows a fruit. And after a month, the bright red fruit filled with black seeds that we saw at the beginning of the book is ripe and ready. A gila woodpecker comes to eat. He looks around the cactus and he decides it's a nice place for him to stay. He's found the perfect place in the desert to begin a new hotel. There's the bright red fruit that grew out of the flowers. There's the woodpecker trying to eat some fruit. And he also realizes, hey, this is a nice place for me to perch. It might be a nice place for me to stay. Have you been thinking about why the cactus might be called a hotel? The woodpecker goes right to work, and the only tool he uses, not a hammer, not a screwdriver, but it's his beak. His beak is very hard. Tap, tap, tap. He bores into the flesh of the cactus. Tap, tap, tap. He digs deep inside to make a space that is comfortable and roomy. Now you might think, oh, that might hurt the cactus if he makes a hole in it. Or maybe the cactus is going to stop growing now and fall down. But no, the cactus is not harmed. It forms a tough scab all around the hole to protect it from drying out. Now just like when we get a cut on our skin, God has made our bodies so that it creates its own band-aid or scab. That's what happens to the cactus after the woodpecker makes a hole in it for her home. The woodpecker gets a waterproof nest that is shady on the hot days, and it's insulated and warm on the frosty nights. And the cactus gets something in return. The woodpecker likes to eat the insects that could bring disease to the cactus. So the woodpecker gets a nice home, and she keeps the cactus from getting disease by eating the insects. Now, after 60 years, the cactus is still growing and changing. The Cactus Hotel is 18 feet tall. To add more space, it begins to grow an arm. Now, this is after 60 years of growing. A woodpecker has a new hole in the trunk. So now, the woodpecker has built another home for itself in the same cactus in a different spot. And farther up, a white-winged dove makes a nest on the arm. And down below, an old owl is the old hole that the woodpecker made is discovered by an elf owl. How many birds are on that Cactus Hotel now? 3. The elf owl, the Gila woodpecker, and the, what was the other one? The white-winged dove. The birds feel safe living high up in a prickly plant where nothing can harm them. Is it starting to look like a hotel with more animals living there, more birds? There's 3 now. I wonder if there will be any more holes in the cactus. Well, all around the desert, there are holes of every size for ants and mice, lizards and snakes, rabbits and foxes. After 150 years, that's right, 150 years, there are holes of every size in the cactus too. The giant plant has finally stopped growing after 150 years. It is 50 feet tall with 7 long branches, not just 1, now it has 7. It's 50 feet tall and it's 150 years old. It weighs 8 tons, and that's just about as heavy as 5 cars on top of each other. So there's holes all over the desert floor for different kinds of animals, and we said that helps to keep them cool when they're low to the ground in their burrows, and it helps to protect them from their predators. And you can see there's many more holes in the cactus as well. So it really is becoming a home for many different animals and birds. And this is a good page for you to look at to see what kinds of different animals actually do live in the desert. What do we have here? A fox, some snakes, the jackrabbit, a squirrel, lizard, some mice, lots of different animals. And what were those birds that we were talking about? The elf owl, the dove, and the woodpecker? Wow. This looks like a very pretty cheerful hotel now with even more holes and animals living in it. And it must be springtime because look, the flowers are on top of the cactus. Everybody wants to live in the Cactus Hotel. Birds lay their eggs and pack rats raise their young. Even insects and bats live there. When one animal moves out, another moves in. And every spring they come for a special treat of nectar and juicy red fruit. Doesn't that look like a pretty hotel? Well, the story is still continuing. Now 200 years have gone by. Do you think the cactus has gotten any taller? No, because we said it stopped growing after 150 years. So this is 50 years later. Do you think it's still around? Well, the old cactus sways when a gust of wind blows, and it falls thud to the sandy floor. Its great thorny arms crumble in the crash. Wow. So after 200 years of standing strong and tall, a gust of wind has blown it to the sandy floor. The creatures that once lived high must find other homes now. But those that prefer to live down low move right in. So it's still a hotel even though it's fallen down and it's not growing anymore. A millipede, a scorpion, and many ants and termites quickly find homes in the toppled hotel. After many months, all that remains are the wooden ribs that supported the cactus while it stood so tall. So inside the cactus, there's wooden ribs or spikes that made it stand so strong and tall. Now the cactus is breaking apart, and you can see some of those that are inside the cactus. Those wooden ribs. A collared lizard dashes over the top looking for insects. A ground snake huddles in the shade below. All around there is a forest of cacti. Cacti is a word that means more than one cactus. Slowly growing in the desert. Through hot and cold, wet and dry. Some will survive long enough to become other cactus hotels. Here's the one on the ground that's a home now for termites and insects. And here's all the other cacti that are growing, and some of them are shorter than others, but they've got a long time to grow, don't they? 150 or 200 years until they topple to the ground. So lots of different animals and birds will come in and out and enjoy living in those cacti. Well, I hope you enjoyed this book, The Cactus Hotel, and learned a lot about desert life, animals, plants, and by now I'm sure you know why this book was called The Cactus Hotel. Tomorrow we'll continue our study about deserts and learn a little bit from the Cat in the Hat. Bye for now.